Michael Winston had made a name for himself helping to grow such companies as McDonnell Douglas, Motorola, and Merrill Lynch into well-oiled corporate titans. But during his time at Merrill Lynch, he received an out-of-the-blue recruitment call from an up-and-coming California mortgage lender who desperately wanted him to bring his talents to the West Coast. The lender who, incidentally, happened to be responsible for Addie Polk's loan. Countrywide.
I remember vividly how Countrywide, how and when they recruited me. Angelo Mozilo was the CEO of the year, and Fortune had an article called the 24,000% growth company, Countrywide. It was on the cover. And they said, we're not used to such growth. You've helped companies become a growth engine before. We want you to make us Goldman Sachs on the Pacific. Come here and do that, and you'll be a hero.
After initial skepticism about joining this relative newcomer to the Fortune 500 scene, Michael eventually accepted the offer. After all, Angelo Mozilo's mission for the company seemed laudable enough to warrant taking the leap on this new venture.
Mortgages are special because they do make such a difference in people's lives. I witnessed that every single day, and I particularly witnessed it when I took loan applications and saw the excitement of people with the opportunity of getting into a home. Home ownership changes a society.
Michael embarked on this new adventure with enthusiasm, excited about the prospects of helping to grow what appeared to be an already great company into a remarkable one. Yet it didn't even take a full week on the job for the first red flag to go up.
On one occasion, I parked in the front, and I passed a car that said Fundum on the plates. A guy came right from that car. Whether he was the owner or was parking it for the owner, I have no idea. But I said, Fundum, that's sort of an interesting plate. What do you suppose it means? And he said, oh, I know what it means. It's Angelo Mozilo's growth strategy for 2006. Now, I've heard of growth strategies moving from domestic to global, moving from products to systems. Fundum is a growth strategy? How can that be a growth strategy? Oh, we're going to fund all loans. What do you mean you're going to fund all loans? What if the person doesn't have a job? And he said, fund him. What if he doesn't have a job and doesn't have any assets? Fund him. And finally I said, I don't understand. What criteria do you use in determining if somebody should get a loan? And he smiled very smugly and he said, if they can fog a mirror, we'll give them a loan.
Experience told Michael that no CEO of a successful company, much less one named CEO of the Year like Angelo Mozilo, would make such a declaration. He assumed it had to be a mistake.
I thought the guy just misunderstood. And if he misunderstood, I was wondering how many other people are doing the wrong thing, just pushing stuff out the door. So I thought, oh, these bad loans are going to end up in Countrywide's backyard, right? It's like a ticking bomb.
Recognizing that these bad loans would utterly devastate the company, Michael quickly got to work in trying to correct the problem, interviewing employees across the company to gain a better understanding of how exactly Countrywide was conducting its business.
I probably spoke to thousands of employees, and I noticed a couple of things that I had never seen before. Number one, many of those people who were recruited were not recruited because they were at the top of their classes. They were recruited specifically because they were at the bottom of their classes. People who had delivered Domino's pizza for a living, and they were making a fortune originating loans, oftentimes to people who were not interested in a loan. They had the most aggressive marketing and sales campaign I had ever experienced. When I couldn't get a question answered, I went to the next level, and the next level, and the next level, all the way to the top, including the chairman of the board.
Everyone at the company was strangely tight-lipped about the details of their lending operations with Michael. And this proved true all the way up to Angelo Mozilo, who instead of speaking with Michael, sent his head of HR, Leora Gorin, to deal with him instead.
He called Leora and said, no, I don't want to talk to Michael. stop all this stuff. It puts us in the spotlight too much. We don't want to be in the spotlight. His assistant handed me a note and said, Leora wants to see you immediately. And she said, people are getting concerned about your relentless, with a straight face, questioning about our loan packages. That's not what we hired you to do, question our people on that stuff. Stay away from it. I said, you hired me because of my background. If I see something that I think is gonna blow up on you or investors, I'm gonna call your attention to it. Why wouldn't I?
But Angelo's word was final, and Leora was instructed to make Michael's inquiries stop completely.
I was directed to stop this line of questioning, which of course precipitated more questions. What are you trying to hide?
After having so much trouble getting to the bottom of how Countrywide was really conducting its business, this conversation with Leora finally made it all click. There was no misunderstanding about the growth strategy the gentleman in the parking lot described. Rather, it was deadly accurate.
I realized that the natural implication of the fundum policy, what if they have no income? Fundum. You don't even need underwriters. You need a clerk with a green eye shade saying approved, 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 approved. And that's ultimately what they had. That's why they were hiring people who had zero experience in their discipline. If they had connected the dots, no kidding, I think everyone would have come to the conclusions I came to, that this was a criminal enterprise.
Michael had uncovered the whole fraud scheme on his own, and the company knew it. And that's when the environment became hostile.
They never said I was fired, but that my office, the ECLO, was disbanded. Just like that. I got an email from Sharon Doyle saying we were all called into a room. Josh Claren was sitting on your desk, and he was smiling imperiously and saying, Michael Winston is not coming back. So I met with Leora. I said, what the hell is going on here? You recruited me here. I sold a house. I bought a house. My son is in high school. What do you mean? They were pounding me. They were trying to embarrass me into resignation. I said, you can do anything you want, but you can even fire me. But I'm not gonna resign because you want me to. I did the right thing, and you're doing the wrong thing now. 2 weeks later, I learned years after, a target was put on my back.
This came from Mozilo, right?
Yes. He's not Countrywide. I want him terminated immediately. Was seen in court on an email drafted by Angelo Mozilo.
But Mozilo's letter never had a chance to take effect. And that's because the ticking time bombs that Michael had been warning about for over a year finally detonated.
Subprimes are starting to reset, causing mortgage payments to go up and homeowners to default.
The defaults right now are incredibly high at unprecedented levels, and there's no evidence that the default rate is tapering off. Those defaults almost inevitably are leading to foreclosures and homes being auctioned and home prices continuing to fall.
What you seem to be saying is that there is a very predictable time bomb effect here.
Exactly.
I mean, what happened was as soon as in 2006, home values started to level off and then started to inch downward, that's when the whole sort of Ponzi scheme collapsed, because no longer could you or one of your competitors take someone out of a bad loan because there was no equity left in the house.
All of the AmeriQuest type loans, it all ends, right? They're gone. The AmeriQuest, the New Centuries of the world, all of those companies, they went out of business virtually overnight because they don't have any assets, right? They're not a bank. They don't have deposits. They don't have savings accounts. They don't have anything like that. The market froze up and they're done that fast.
This company is gone. I mean, just gone. And it was a big company and it's gone. And you saw people in there literally crying. I mean, just crying.
We were pushed to do sales. We were doing things in the branch and within the company that clearly were problematic to get the numbers up. And they closed 12 branches in June, 500 people were laid off. And by August of 2007, the entire operation was shut down.
I'd be lying to say if I didn't have part of me that said, yeah, this was top heavy for a while and we probably all saw this coming, but just hoped the day would never happen when it came full circle.
Mortgage giants across the country were crumbling under the weight of their fraudulent loans. Yet as the AmeriQuests, Greenpoints, and New Centuries of the world all collapsed in ruin, one lender was still hanging on for dear life, determined to defy the inevitable.
Can you categorically say we will avoid bankruptcy?
Well, I can't categorically say, no company can say they can avoid bankruptcy because no company, it can be guaranteed they can't go bankrupt. But I can tell you, we are a very solid company.
Despite being in dire straits, Angelo Mozilo maintained that Countrywide was as healthy as ever. And he wasn't just using this line on the public.
The story they told their people was, we're going to be stronger than before. We're going to be the only one left. Somebody said, so are you saying we should buy Countrywide stock? They said, I'm saying you should back up the Brinks truck and buy Countrywide stock. As these guys are selling their shares hand over fist, they were encouraging us to buy.
You got to remember that we're a survivor. You're interviewing me. I mean, look at, the other day, Greenpoint, New Century, AmeriQuest. We just go right down the line of companies that have been around for years. All these companies are gone. At the end of the day, we're the only game left in town.
Ultimately, Countrywide became insolvent. Literally, they had drained all their lines of credit. Countrywide was worth nothing, and no one would lend them a penny. All of the bonuses that we were to get were stopped. Ironically, Angelo's bonus didn't stop. He earned his highest bonus the year that Countrywide became insolvent.
Once the dust settled, stories began to emerge that Angelo Mozilo had been paying himself at least 5 times more than any other CEO for a similar-sized company, despite the fact that the vast majority of the company's profits over the course of the decade had been fictional. As authorities investigated Countrywide's collapse, the giant bonuses extracted by Mozilo raised a giant red flag, which ultimately led to federal charges being filed against the former CEO.
The Securities and Exchange Commission filed suit against Angelo Mozilo, former head of Countrywide Mortgage, accusing him of insider trading and fraud.
The government claims that in 2006, Mozilo knew Countrywide was engaged in risky lending practices and headed for collapse, even as investors were assured all was fine. The SEC claims in a 2006 internal email, flying blind is how Mozilo described the company's financial picture. If criminal charges are brought and successfully prosecuted, Mozilo could be forced from his gated community into a jail cell. Pierre Thomas, ABC News, Washington.
Hey all, become that person nobody dares to argue with. Hit like, subscribe, and that little bell button for notifications. Talk to you soon.